Picture this. I'm standing at the edge of my kitchen, the morning light slicing through the blinds in sharp golden streaks, and I'm clutching a mug of coffee that's gone cold in my hands. My name's Brooke. I'm 29, and for the last 5 years, I've been building a life with my husband, Ethan. We've carved out this little world together, a cozy bubble of routines and quiet evenings. But lately, I've been wondering if we're more like two people sharing a space than a couple truly connected. Ethan's a solid guy, don't get me wrong. He's got a heart of gold, but his mind often wanders elsewhere, lost in the roar of a football game on TV, or caught up in late-night chats with his buddies. I don't resent him for it, not really. It's just, sometimes I feel like I'm on the sidelines of his life. Speaking of his buddies, they've been a constant since the day I met Ethan. There's Jason, the kind of guy who walks into a room and owns it with a single smirk. He's got this effortless charm, a quick wit that can make anyone laugh, and a sly grin that feels like he's always holding a winning card up his sleeve. Then there's Gary, the opposite in every way. He's quiet, almost too quiet, with these intense, piercing eyes that seem to cut right through the small talk. It's like he's always watching, always thinking, and it can make you feel exposed in a way that's hard to shake. And finally, there's Oliver, the easygoing one of the trio. He's always got a beer in hand, a laugh that's just a little too loud, and a laid-back vibe that makes you feel like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. These three have been Ethan's ride or die since their college days, and by extension, they've woven themselves into my life too. I can't count the number of times we've all piled into our backyard for barbecues, the smell of grilled burgers mixing with the sound of their banter, or the game nights where we've crowded around our dining table, cards and empty bottles scattered everywhere, laughing over inside jokes that go back years. I've grown used to their presence, comfortable even. Jason's teasing, Gary's quiet stares, Oliver's endless stories. They're as familiar to me as Ethan's morning yawn or the way he hums off-key in the shower. It's been a steady rhythm, a predictable dance of friendship and shared moments. We've built memories in the mundane, in the way Jason always sneaks an extra slice of pie, or how Gary lingers at the edge of conversations, observing more than speaking, or how Oliver's clumsy hugs somehow feel like home. This little circle, it's been my normal for so long. But normal has a way of slipping through your fingers when you least expect it. I've been carrying something heavy for the past 3 days, something I can't quite name out loud. I'm still reeling from the weight of whatever's been sitting on my chest these past few days, but let me take you back to where it all started. About a week ago, my phone buzzed with Jason's name flashing across the screen. His voice was electric, practically vibrating through the speaker as he hyped up this concert by a local indie band we've all been into for years. He was insistent, almost pleading, that we had to go as a group. Me, Ethan, Gary, Oliver, and him. It felt like a spark of something we hadn't had in forever, a chance to break out of the monotony that's been creeping into my life with Ethan. I was all in, and when I told Ethan, his face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. It was like we were kids again, planning a night out with nothing but good vibes ahead. The day of the concert rolled around, and I found myself standing in front of my closet, fingers brushing over hangers as I hunted for something that felt alive. My eyes landed on this short denim skirt tucked in the back, something I hadn't worn since I was a reckless teenager sneaking out to parties. I pulled it out, the fabric rough against my skin, and slipped it on. Standing in front of the mirror, I felt this rush, like I was stepping back into a version of myself I'd forgotten. Bold, carefree, maybe even a little daring. The skirt hugged me in all the right places, and I paired it with a tight sweater that clung just enough to turn heads without screaming for attention. I threw on some beat-up sneakers to keep it casual, but deep down, I knew I wanted to feel seen tonight. I wanted a reaction, something to pull me out of this invisible rut I've been stuck in. I walked into the living room, twirling a little as I showed off the outfit to Ethan. My heart was hoping for a spark in his eyes, maybe a playful comment, or even a lingering glance. But he barely looked up from the fridge, just shrugged as he grabbed a six-pack for our little pregame at home. "Looks fine," he mumbled, already distracted by the clink of bottles in his hand. That indifference hit me like a cold splash of water, stinging more than I wanted to admit. I swallowed it down, though, plastering on a smile and telling myself the night would still be amazing. We'd have fun. We had to. A couple of hours later, the 5 of us were piled into Ethan's old SUV, the kind of beat-up ride that smells faintly of motor oil and nostalgia. Jason claimed the passenger seat, as always, cracking one-liners that had us chuckling before we even left the driveway. I was squeezed in the back between Gary and Oliver, the air thick with the sharp tang of cheap whiskey as they passed a flask back and forth. I took a small sip when it came my way, the burn sliding down my throat and warming my chest, matching the buzz of excitement. As we spilled out of Ethan's SUV and made our way into the concert venue, the energy was already electric, a living pulse that seemed to hum through the air. The night was thick with the scent of sweat and spilled beer, the kind of summer heat that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel heavy. We navigated through the sea of bodies, finally carving out a spot near the back row of the standing area. It wasn't close to the stage, not by a long shot, but the bass was so powerful it vibrated up through the ground, rattling my bones in the best way. I could feel it in my chest, a primal thrum that matched the quickening beat of my heart. The crowd around us was a wall of heat. People pressed shoulder to shoulder, their voices a chaotic roar over the opening act's distorted guitar riffs. Ethan, predictable as ever, clapped a hand on my shoulder and grinned. "I'm hitting the beer stand before the main set. Be back in a bit," he said, his voice barely cutting through the noise before he vanished into the mass of swaying bodies. That left me with Jason, Gary, and Oliver, the 4 of us standing close in our little pocket of space. The heat was unbearable now, pressing down on me like a physical weight. Sweat beaded on my forehead, trickling down the back of my neck, and I could feel my sweater sticking to my skin, suffocating me. In a sudden, impulsive move, I grabbed the hem and yanked it over my head, leaving me in just a thin, lacy bra and that short denim skirt I'd picked out earlier. The rush of cooler air against my damp skin was instant, a shiver of relief mixed with something else, a thrill, sharp and dangerous, at being so exposed in the middle of this wild, anonymous crowd. I caught the shift immediately. Jason's smirk froze for a split second before it widened, his eyes flicking over me in a way that made my pulse spike. Gary's stare was heavier, those piercing eyes locking onto me with an intensity that felt like it could strip me down further than I already was. Oliver let out a low whistle, his usual easy-going grin replaced by something hungrier, something I wasn't used to seeing from him. I should have felt embarrassed, maybe even ashamed, but I didn't. Not then. Instead, there was this rush of power, a heady feeling I hadn't tasted in ages, not from Ethan, not from anyone. Their attention was like a spotlight, and for once, I didn't mind being center stage. The music kicked up a notch, the drums pounding harder, the singer's voice tearing through the speakers with raw, desperate energy. I let it take me over, closing my eyes and starting to move. My hips swayed to the rhythm, my body loosening as I danced, letting go of every tight knot of tension I'd been carrying for weeks. I felt free, untethered, the sticky heat and the press of the crowd fading into the background as I lost myself in the beat. My arms lifted above my head, my hair sticking to my neck as I spun, the world blurring into streaks of light and sound. Then it happened. Mid-movement, I felt a slip, a tiny tug at my shoulder. Before I could react, the strap of my bra slid down, and in one horrifying slow-motion second, the whole thing shifted, falling away and leaving me completely bare in front of everyone. My heart slammed to a stop, my breath catching in my throat as I froze, hands hovering uselessly in the air. The noise of the concert seemed to mute, the world narrowing to the pounding in my ears and the sudden, suffocating awareness of eyes on me. I couldn't move, couldn't think, until Jason was there, stepping in close, too close. His hands came up, covering me, his palms warm and firm against my skin, in a way that sent a jolt through me I wasn't prepared for. The contact was electric, a current that burned through the shock and left something else in its wake. Something I didn't want to name. "You okay?" he murmured, his voice low, almost lost under the music, but I felt it more than I'm still trembling from that moment on the concert floor. Jason's hands lingering on me, his voice a low hum in my ear asking if I'm okay. My mind is a storm, a chaotic swirl of embarrassment and something darker, something I can't name without feeling the weight of guilt pressing down on me. I managed to stammer out a shaky, "Yeah," my voice barely audible over the pounding music, as I fumbled to pull my sweater from where it dangled at my elbow. I didn't put it back on, though. Not yet. My hands just clutched the fabric like a lifeline, my skin still prickling from where his touch had been. The crowd around us seemed oblivious, lost in the thrum of the band, but I felt like every eye was still on me, burning through the dim light. Jason tilted his head, that smirk of his creeping back as he gestured toward the edge of the venue. "Let's get you somewhere quieter for a sec, cool off a bit," he said, his tone casual but laced with something heavier, something that made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't decide was fear or anticipation. Gary and Oliver were right there too, their expressions unreadable in the shifting shadows of the strobe lights, but I could feel the weight of their gazes as they nodded in agreement. I didn't argue. I couldn't. My legs felt like they were moving on their own as I followed Jason's lead, weaving through the sea of bodies toward a narrow hallway at the side of the venue. The walk to the bathroom felt like it stretched on forever, every step dragging out in slow motion as my senses sharpened to every tiny detail. The concrete floor beneath my sneakers was sticky, each stride making a faint, tacky sound as my soles peeled away from the grime. It was like walking through molasses, every movement heavy with the residue of spilled drinks and who knows what else coating the ground. Overhead, the fluorescent lights flickered erratically, casting harsh, stuttering glows that made the graffiti-scrawled walls seem to pulse with a life of their own. The air was damp, thick with the lingering scent of sweat and something sour I didn't want to think about. As we moved further from the main stage, the thumping bass of the concert faded into a muffled heartbeat, a distant echo that still vibrated faintly in my chest, but left an eerie quiet in its place, broken only by the scuff of our shoes and the uneven rhythm of my own breathing. My heart was a wild thing, hammering so hard I was sure they could hear it over the hum of the flickering lights. Fear and excitement tangled together in my veins, an intoxicating mix that made my head spin. I didn't know what I was walking into, not really, but there was a part of me, a reckless, desperate part, that didn't care. We reached the bathroom door, a dented slab of metal with peeling paint, and a scratched-up sign that barely read restroom. Jason pushed it open with a creak, holding it for me as I stepped inside, Gary and Oliver trailing close behind. The space was cramped, barely big enough for the four of us, the walls plastered with layers of crude drawings and scribbled names in marker and pen. The single bulb above the sink buzzed faintly, casting a sickly yellow light that made everything look washed out, almost surreal. Jason turned and slid the lock into place with a sharp click that seemed to echo in the tiny room. The sound snapped me back to myself for a moment, a jolt of reality cutting through the haze. What was I doing here? Why hadn't I just stayed in the crowd, waited for Ethan to come back with his beer and his oblivious smile? But before I could spiral too far, Gary moved to lean against the chipped porcelain sink, his arms crossed, those piercing eyes of his fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl in a way I couldn't quite call unpleasant. Oliver, trying to lighten the air, cracked a nervous joke about the state of the place, something about it being a 5-star suite. But his usual easy laugh sounded forced, and when I glanced at him, I saw that same hungry glint in his eyes I'd noticed earlier, sharper now in the, I'm standing in this grimy bathroom, the air thick with a stale, sour tang that clings to the back of my throat, and my heart is racing so fast I can barely breathe. The lock's click still echoes in my ears, a final barrier between us and the outside world, and I'm hyper-aware of every inch of this cramped, suffocating space. The walls seem to close in, covered in scrawled marks and faded ink, and that buzzing yellow light overhead makes everything feel like a fever dream. I'm caught in this moment, suspended between what I know I should do and what I'm letting myself feel. Jason's standing close, too close. His presence a heat I can't ignore. His hands, which had been a shield out there on the concert floor, now shift, moving from protective to something else, something possessive. He pulls me nearer, his grip firm, and I don't pull away. I can't. Not when Gary steps forward, his silent intensity pinning me in place. And Oliver closes the gap too, his usual easygoing nature replaced by a raw edge that makes my stomach twist. My back hits the rough, cold wall, the uneven texture scraping against my bare shoulders, a sharp contrast to the heat radiating from their bodies. Their breath is hot against my skin, ragged and uneven, mixing with the distant, muffled pulse of the concert outside. It's like the world beyond this room has faded, reduced to a faint echo, while everything here is amplified. Every touch, every sound, every conflicting emotion tearing through me. My own body betrays me, caught in a storm of fear and a dangerous, forbidden thrill. I'm trembling, not just from nerves but from a pull I can't fight, a need to be seen, to be wanted, that I've buried for too long. And in this moment, I give in. I let it happen. I cross a line I can't uncross, surrendering to the chaos with all three of them, Ethan's closest friends, in this filthy hidden corner of the venue. It's a blur of tangled limbs and whispered heat, a collision of guilt and reckless abandon that I know I'll never be able to erase from my mind. The sounds around me are a haze. Low murmurs from them, words I can't quite catch, blending with my own stifled gasps as I try to keep some semblance of control. The distant roar of the crowd and the thrum of the band seep through the walls, a reminder of the life I'm betraying just beyond this door. Time feels warped, stretching endlessly in some moments and collapsing in others, like I'm caught in a loop I can't escape. My mind is screaming at me to stop, to think of Ethan, to remember who I am, but my body and heart are drowning in the intensity of it all. There's a rush, a fleeting high of being desired so fiercely, but it's crushed almost instantly by the weight of what I'm doing. Every second carves a deeper mark of shame into me, a stain I can't wash out. I know I've shattered something sacred, something I can't piece back together, and yet I'm still here, lost in the storm of it. When it's over, the air feels heavier, thick with the aftermath of our choices. My hands are shaking as I fumble to pull my clothes back on, the fabric catching on my damp skin as I try to cover up the evidence of my betrayal. I can't look at them, Jason, Gary, Oliver. I keep my eyes on the cracked tile floor, avoiding the reflection in the smudged mirror above the sink. Their movements are hurried too, awkward adjustments and muttered words that mean nothing. Someone says it's fine, that no one will know, but the reassurance feels hollow. A lie we're telling ourselves to fill the silence. My chest aches with every breath, the reality of what I've done sinking in like a stone. I've not just crossed a line, I've obliterated it, and there's no going back to the person I was an hour ago. The guilt is a living thing, clawing at me from the inside, but I shove it down, bury it beneath a mask of composure I don. As I stumbled out of that grimy bathroom, my legs felt like they were made of jelly, barely holding me up as I rejoined the pulsing crowd at the concert. My mind was a whirlwind, spinning with the weight of what I'd just let happen. The echoes of forbidden choices clinging to me like a second skin. Every step back into the sea of bodies felt like wading through quicksand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The music was still blaring, the bass vibrating through the ground, but it all sounded distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I could barely focus on the flashing lights or the sweaty, swaying mass around me. All I could feel was the invisible burden pressing down on my chest, a secret so heavy I could hardly breathe. I found our spot near the back, Jason, Gary, and Oliver slipping into place beside me as if nothing had changed. Their faces were masks of normalcy, their casual postures a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I tried to mimic them, to stand there like everything was fine, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I shoved them into the pockets of my skirt, hoping no one would notice. The air was thick with the scent of beer and sweat, the heat of the crowd suffocating, but it was nothing compared to the heat of shame burning under my skin. I kept my eyes on the stage, pretending to watch the band, but I wasn't seeing anything. My thoughts were trapped in that cramped, flickering bathroom, replaying every moment I couldn't take back. Then I saw him, Ethan, pushing through the crowd toward us, a beer in each hand, his face flushed with the kind of carefree excitement I used to love seeing. My stomach twisted into knots as he approached, his grin wide and oblivious, completely unaware of the betrayal standing right in front of him. "Hey, you guys enjoy the last few songs?" he shouted over the music, handing me one of the cold, dripping cans. His voice was so genuine, so trusting, that it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I forced a smile, my lips trembling as I nodded, my voice cracking when I managed to choke out, "Yeah, it was great." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, and I had to look away, pretending to sip the beer just to avoid his eyes. I couldn't bear to see the warmth in them, not when I knew I didn't deserve it. Jason, Gary, and Oliver played their parts flawlessly. They laughed, slapped Ethan on the back, and made some offhand comment about the band's set list, acting like the last half hour hadn't turned my world upside down. Their ease made me feel even more isolated, like I was the only one carrying the weight of what we'd done. I stood there, surrounded by the roar of the crowd and the pounding of the encore, but I felt like a stranger in my own skin. The band's final notes rang out, the singer's voice raw and haunting, and all I could think about was how I'd shattered something I could never repair. The lights flashed, the crowd cheered, but I was numb to it all, trapped in a haze of guilt and self-loathing that no amount of noise could drown out. The rest of the night passed in a blur, like I was watching it happen to someone else. I remember bits and pieces, piling back into Ethan's old SUV, the familiar smell of motor oil and worn leather seats grounding me for a fleeting second before the weight came crashing back. I sat in the back, staring out the window at the passing streetlights, their glow blurring into streaks as my mind replayed everything over and over. Ethan was in the driver's seat, rambling on about the beer selection at the venue, cracking jokes about how overpriced everything was. His voice was light, carefree, each word a reminder of how little he knew, how close I was to the man I'd betrayed while he sat just a few feet away, completely unaware. I nodded occasionally, murmuring vague agreements, but my throat was tight, my words hollow. Jason, Gary, and Oliver chimed in with their usual banter, their voices blending into the background as I sank deeper. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.